guys got started in 2018. I read somewhere August 2018, which makes it just about 7 years on the dot. Do you even remember the early days?
I actually remember some parts of the early days very, very well, but other parts are just like fog. Because it was so intense, it was so competitive, and back then also there was this very, very big focus on raising money, who raises the next round, which created a lot of course, speed and urgency and so on, but it also created quite a lot of not sustainable behavior when it comes to competition about city tenders, over-promising and so on, when it comes to pricing, because none of us were profitable. We were very, very far from profitable back then. So it was very, very intense.
I can imagine. I was a European tech journalist back then running Tech.eu, so I followed the story from up close. There was a lot of money and hype and everything that comes with it. For sure, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that in a minute. But maybe before we start, congratulations on winning Paris, or winning Paris again, I should say, with the e-bike license. How big of a deal is that for you as a company?
I mean, there are two sides to that answer. One, Paris, the additional financial contribution and the number of vehicles and so on for Voi as a whole, it will be a good one, but we don't live or die with one city anymore. But emotionally and symbolically, and for our business in France, it's massive. Paris, some of you might know it, 2018, 2019, Paris was by far the most competitive city. It was the city everyone wanted to win, and it became quite chaotic. It became chaotic from a parking point of view, a lot of cluttering, in some situations from a safety point of view, from a sustainability point of view, and so on. And then Paris pulled the handbrake, did a tender in 2020, which all of us wanted to win so much, but we lost it. So Dot won it, Tier won it, Lime won it. So we left Paris in 2020. We haven't operated in Paris in 2020. And now, 5 years later, we went all in again because we really, really, really want to be in Paris. Both, as I mentioned, for the financial and operational contribution to the company. But Paris is like the capital of the world to some extent. It's the city of love, it's the city of lights, it's the city where all American tourists want to go. So the symbolical and brand value of Paris is much, much larger than most other cities. I mean, in Europe, only London can compete with Paris on star quality.
No, I can imagine that for sure. But you did mention you operate in a lot of towns and cities across Europe. I think about 110 plus at this point. Is it only Europe, or are you also active outside of Europe?
Yeah, so we're big believers in focus, and that's I think one reason that things have gone quite well for us. I mean, we turned EBIT profitable last year. We're a public company now with public debt trading on the stock exchange in Stockholm. We haven't listed our equity yet. After Q1 this year, we became net income profitable as well. So we're like a properly profitable company. No adjustments. Properly profitable company now. And focus has been a key driver for that. It's very easy to invest or burn a lot of money in a hardware-heavy business, which our business is, because we own our e-scooters, we own our e-bikes. E-scooters and e-bikes are expensive, and the early generations didn't have very good lifetime, so the business was far from profitable. But now, 6-7 years in, we finally turned profitable and feel overall very, very, very optimistic and excited about the future. I think for myself, I've never been more excited about Voi and the micromobility industry now, 7 years in, than ever before.
Yep. 7 very intensive years, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
If you think back to the beginning, the original mission and vision that every startup needs to have, if you think back what Voi defined as its mission and vision, is that still largely the same, or has it evolved or even completely changed over time?
I mean, I typically say that pretty much everything has changed at Voi since August 2018 when we launched in Stockholm, except the vision and mission. We set out a vision where the tagline is "Cities made for living, free from noise and pollution." which for us means that we believe that transportation in cities in the future will be lighter, more electric, more connected, also more interconnected. So micromobility with public transportation, with trains and other sustainable modes of transport. And someone got to lose in that. And for us, we hope and believe that privately owned cars in city centers will lose market share to other modes of transportation. At the same time, sometimes I get the comment or question like, so you hate cars? Like, no, I don't hate cars. I think cars fill a very important role in transportation overall. But I think they've taken a way too big role in transportation within cities, often with one passenger in one car, and often sitting long hours and distances in a traffic jam and waiting and so on. So it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I know the pain. Do you have a car?
I don't anymore because I got parking fines all the time in Stockholm. So then I decided to,
Stockholm is quite notorious for that.
Stockholm is very notorious on, making it difficult and expensive to have your car.
I know. So you mentioned competition, you named a few of them. But do you see, when I say the word competition or the term competitive landscape, do you think of cars, public transport as your competitors? Is it Tier Dot, Lime, Bird, etc.? Or is it something else? Like, well, what do you think of immediately when I say that?
I mean, it's better for everyone in the micromobility industry if we work to build and create a larger pie. Because a larger pie means all of us will have a lot of absolute value to share and split up between us. Where the opposite is in our shared micromobility industry, if the market gets too regulated, the pie gets very small. You cannot put out enough vehicles for the service to be user experience friendly and so on. Then you don't get enough revenues, then you don't get enough profits, then you can't invest in R&D, new vehicles, new optimization, software platform, data and so on. So that's of course the best. But our direct competitors are companies like Dot, like Bird, like Lime, Bolt in some markets. But we're down to very few. When you started to follow the shared e-scooter and e-bike industry in 2018-19, there were probably 25 companies that raised money, that went for the win, and now we're down to a few. So this is the natural survival of the fittest.
Definitely a few bodies there, and a few zombies, I would say, still around.
Zombies as well.
But then the obvious question there is there going to be a wave of consolidation? Is there still room for more private investors to come into that space big time and really scale it up? Or has that ship sailed and now it's like all about sustainable growth and taking it slower but more sustainable?
If you look at it from an industry perspective, like, let's focus on Europe now, Europe and North America. The number of players now is probably down to something that could be sustainable, even better with one or two less, say that we're 4 or something now in Europe, 4.5. In North America, it's 2. So that's probably a quite sustainable number of players, 2 or 3 in Europe. In North America, but this is not a winner takes it all market. It's a winners take it all market. If you look at some other business models with very strong network effects, such as the classified sites where people buy and sell stuff, it's often winner takes it all. Our business have less like global network effects, strong local network effects on a city level, and huge advantages of scale, so economies of scale, and what we also have is, of course, the gatekeepers to the users. The gatekeepers to the users being the cities. Because when we started in 2018 and 19 and 20, there were no regulations, there were no licenses, tenders, and so on. That started to come in I think the first one in Europe was Marseille in 2019, then Paris in 2020, and now, say, 60-70% of our market. Of our vehicles are in licensed or tendered markets, and to win those licenses and tenders, of course, the bar has gone up and become higher and higher every year. What you need to offer to win a tender now is much more advanced and difficult to deliver on. from a technology perspective, sustainability, safety, parking, and so on than in 2020. And on your question about funding into this space, I mean, we have gone through raising a lot of venture capital over the first years. So venture capital funded all the hardware, all the investments in teams, in R&D and so on, and also all the losses. Last year was the first year when we turned profitable for real. So we decided towards the end of last year or mid last year to, instead of going out, we saw we are very close to real profitability now. We will get there in a couple of months. Instead of raising more equity and take more dilution, because we took quite a lot of dilution over the first years from the equity investors, we said we go out now and spend 6 months on finding the best possible debt alternative to finance fleet growth. We spoke to probably 100 banks, credit funds, various forms of debt providers. And in the end, we went to the public market and raised public debt, so a bond in Stockholm. That's now trading. So if anyone wants to buy public debt in a micromobility company, go to Stockholm Stock Exchange. And that was another next step in our maturity journey as a company. So now we're doing quarterly reports. There are 2 quarterly reports out so far, similar to a publicly listed equity company, which has just raised the bar and professionalism and so on, also in the eyes of investors. But since we are profitable, we have access to debt, we don't need to raise any more equity money. I think there is a good opportunity now for equity investors to go into the space as things have matured. Profitability, in our case, is there, and some of our peers are very close to profitability. So now is probably a risk-adjusted better moment to come in than 2018.
Fair enough. So that makes you a semi-public company, I guess you can say. But I'm interested. You had conversations with hundreds of potential debt investors, banks, etc. What did they ask? What did they care about? What are some of the metrics or the milestones that you needed to prove to them? Or what did they ask for?
I mean, simplify the difference between equity investors and debt investors is equity investors invest for upside and debt investors invest to protect downside. So with the debt investors we talked to, there was a lot around cash flows, asset value, what happens on a rainy day, in a worst case scenario. Can we then take all your 100,000 plus vehicles and sell it to someone? Do we as a bank or credit fund need to gather all the vehicles from Helsinki, Seville, Milan, London and so on, and then find a buyer, or how does that work? So there was a lot of education to these debt investors on, this is how the business works. We think it's very solid. That's why we want to raise debt now. But it took at least 100 meetings.
Insane. Those are the metrics that the investors or potential investors care about. What are the metrics that you care about as a chief executive officer? What's your dashboard that you look at every day and say, hey, this is what matters to me?
For now, it's a lot around our users, our riders. So Voi's journey was raising a lot of equity money up until 2021. Then when we left the zero interest rate period, we quickly switched around to focus on profitability, discipline, unit economics, and so on. So those years, the first years was just like growth, but not fully sustainable growth. It was vanity metrics such as how many cities are you live in, how many vehicles do you have on the streets, and things like that, instead of like real financial metrics such as revenue, gross margin, EBITDA, EBIT, cash flow, where we are now. But now, since we feel we have fixed the foundations in the business, our headquarters is right-sized, gross margin works. So really over the last year, it's been sustainable growth and very much more focus on the riders, users, going deeper in understanding why our users ride, when they ride, how they ride, and so on, the different user groups, and then personalizing the user experience as much as we can. For example, if you use the Voi app, of course, we have data on how much you ride, where you ride, how you pay, when you pay, and so on. But we also have a lot of data on your behavior. Are you a rider that, for example, rides against red light? Are you a rider that 50% of your rides, you park badly? Then we built what we call an activity score for all our riders, where we try to incentivize riders to park well and behave well. And when riders are above 90% good behavior, rightly parked and so on, then we feel confident that we can give you some more buffers and we can be more liberal in the user experience to create a better user experience for you. Buffers in parking zones and so on. When you ride to your 3 most common parking spots, then you don't have to take a parking photo, things like that. To basically incentivize good behavior, which is great for us, it's great for the user, and it works for the cities as well.
Yeah, makes total sense. Completely understandable from a company perspective. But you did mention you raised quite a lot of money, $400 million, I think it was, in equity funding from Balderton and Rain and V&V. These investors are typically looking for an exit at some point. I mean, they're not a charity. How are the conversations with them now? You have sustainable growth, but it's not, the type of growth that they might have expected when they invested, 5-6 years ago. So how are those conversations now?
Overall, our investors feel very good with where we are now. Because typically, as an investor, you either want, if you're a venture capital investor, early stage, you either want crazy growth and invest more and hope that you become profitable. Or if you're more of a late stage investor, and many of our investors are more late stage investors, they prefer, say, 30% growth profitably over several years. Which risk adjusted for them is the returns they're looking for. But we still have some catch up to do. Like, we raised money at quite high valuations in 2021. Valuations dropped, and the money we raised on very high valuations, like $1 billion in 2021, they were of course very hope-based and hype, to some extent hype-based valuations. They were not fundamental valuations. While now where we are as a company and where I think our industries is that you will get valued on fundamentals, like the quality of your revenues, the quality of your profits, the quality of your forecast when it comes to growth and so on, and metrics such as return on invested capital, return on capital employed, which asset-heavy businesses that are older and more mature and publicly listed and so on live and breathe every day. So we're getting into that stage now, and then you need very strong people on the team who are not in it for the hype. They're in it because they love micromobility, they love see people riding every day, they love to optimize a basis point or 0.02% every day over years. That compounds up both to a great user experience and also profits, and from good profits and cash flows you eventually get high valuations.
Yeah. One last financial question, then we'll move on to other topics. But you mentioned earlier you're a semi-public company, maybe one day a fully fledged public company. Is that something that you're already preparing for?
I mean, to some extent, what we did when we raised public debt was also a very clear step in at some point listing our equity. So the quarterly reports we're doing now every quarter, we try to meet the standards that a company with listed equity would have to meet in Nasdaq Stockholm. So through that, we're getting ready, both from a financial control and reporting point of view, from a governance point of view, from an accounting point of view, and all of that. So for us, it will be much easier for us, say after 6, 8, 12 quarterly reports out there in the public markets, to list our equity as well, than a startup scale-up that doesn't have their things in order. And an interesting thing we've learned as well since we raised this public bond last year, some of our more venture capital-like investors, they were very scared of our numbers being so out there, because venture capitalists don't like when the numbers of their companies are out there, because they think that competitors can do X, Y, Z, then crush the business, and journalists will bash your numbers because they are not good enough. We have actually seen the opposite. Having proper standardized quarterly reports out there has built credibility with journalists, with other investors, like public market investors, are used to reading financial reports on standardized formats. They're not used to reading startup and scale-up metrics, which can be very vibed sometimes. It's GMV, it's gross revenue, it's net revenue, it's some weird gross margin, it's adjusted EBITDA, and so on. So that's been very positive. And also with cities. Like when we are in discussions now with cities, one, we're profitable, two, we're a semi-public company. It just gives credibility.
Makes sense, and also speaks to how much the climate has changed, like in the general investment market. So I promise to move on from financials.
No, it hasn't changed for AI though. AI now, now the hype cycle is very similar to what we saw in 2018,
where you were in
2019.
2018, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about safety. We just heard a very interesting keynote, so I don't want to avoid the topic. You care a lot about safety, obviously, from a company perspective and personally, but how have you seen the sentiment about safety and the actual measures taken when it comes to safety evolve over the last 7 years of Voi?
Yeah, before that, I think your presentation was amazing. It was really, really good. Very, very well spoken and data driven. And I agree on pretty much everything you said. And we put safety at the heart and at the forefront of how we want to build our product operations and Voi as a company. I think we were a bit inspired by Volvo, the Swedish, it was a Swedish car brand, now it's a Chinese car brand.
Don't tell anyone.
Okay, it's a Swedish car brand. And for everyone who have been close to mobility in some way, shape or form in Sweden, Volvo has like set the ethos of that if you do mobility and healthcare as well, other companies have done it, safety needs to be A, B, and C. And I think where we have developed is, back then it was safety for the riders. And safety for the riders is, of course, very important, but as important is safety for the non-riders. Since we're having our mobility service out there on the streets for the public, and most people in a city are not riders and not users, but they are indirectly impacted by our service. And then the third leg as well, that we have spent so much time and invested so much on, is safety for employees. Since we operate all our vehicles as well, so say now soon we have 150,000 vehicles out. That's 150,000 vehicles. We have swappable batteries, so we handle over 200,000 batteries. And lithium-ion batteries, whether you like it or not, they will melt. There will be water intrusion and so on. There will be like accidents. If you cannot handle that well, which we weren't super good at 4 years ago, bad things happen. Things burn down. Vehicles start to burn on the street and things like that. So health and safety for employees, we have learned and become very, very good at. Very much inspired by a board member we brought on, Italian man who was at Amazon for 20 years, who is so obsessed about health and safety for the workers in the fulfillment centers for Amazon. And it's very much similar to our business. Batteries is one thing, but then our mechanics and fleet specialists swapping batteries, they lift the vehicles, they can cut themselves, it can be bad for your back. So like more holistically safety, not only rider safety, but include broader holistic safety, then your rider safety will also improve a lot.
I was sitting in the audience earlier today when the Brussels Minister of Mobility was giving a keynote. Very short, but very clearly a call for more collaboration with micromobility providers on things like security and safety, of course. I'm guessing this is also something that you had to learn over time, how to have those conversations with city governments, regional governments, national governments. That's not something you'd necessarily sign up for when you start a company. How was that for you, learning to learn that side of the business?
I mean, we have always thought it was very important, but we also learned the hard way in some situations how important it can be. Because if we zoom back and look at where we were in 2018 and 2019 when we launched and the industry in the Western world really took off, it was still a bet on will e-scooters be legal or illegal? Will there be a ban in every city we want to operate in and are operating in. E-bikes was a bit more accepted already because bikes have been around for such a long time. But in 2018 and 2019, the big regulatory question for us was, will we become banned or not? And banned means...
So it's not even compliance, it's just, can we operate at all?
Yeah. Because we had some early situations in US cities when Bird and Lime expanded fast, when the cities just like this banned them overnight. That didn't happen for e-scooters in Europe. I mean, we have seen a few situations. Paris, of course, the largest one were...
Barcelona as well, right?
Barcelona never launched, actually. They've just not legalized it yet. Where Paris banned, or as I call it, paused e-scooters. We hope to come back with e-scooters as well. But that was very much the conversation then. And we were not very welcomed in city councils and so on. We were more seen as a techie thing, not mobility, future infrastructure and so on. But over time that has changed. And now I would say in every city we're operating in and want to operate, we have very good dialogues with the city councils and traffic authorities and so on. And some cities will want e-scooters only. Some cities will want e-bikes only. Like a very e-scooter heavy city is Oslo in Norway. A very e-bike heavy city is, of course, Paris, London to some extent as well. But most cities will want both. And there will be a bit like this. E-scooters advance somewhere, e-bikes advance somewhere else, and then e-scooters catch up, e-scooters get paused, perhaps e-bikes get paused because there is no demand. So now it's a much more constructive, productive, and how can we build the futures together dialogue than in the early days when it was, will you ban us or not?
So that's my question to you. How do you plan for future of mobility here in Europe? Or what are they planning for that you need to take into account?
The very cool thing about Europe is micromobility is one of the industries where Europe is leading and will continue to lead, I think. We have better infrastructure than anywhere else with the bike history and bike lanes and so on. Politicians are more two-wheeler centric than in North America or in Asia as well. Consumers are also more used to it. So overall, both the consumer sentiment, the city sentiment, and infrastructure is better. I mean, most industries, either Asia or North America, are far ahead. Europe is leading here, and most European cities have very ambitious plans for 2030, 2035, net zero goals, and so on, city planning goals, where micromobility is included as an integrated part with overall sustainable urban planning and other sustainable ways of getting around. So we're very excited to just meet that increased demand that we continue to see. In cities where we've been very long, some of the Scandinavian cities, some of the German cities, Marseille in France, where we've been like 6-7 years now, we continue to be amazed now in 2025 how much we continue to grow in markets we thought were kind of tapped out, penetrated, both on the number of vehicles out, because the cities get more and more confident around that we have taken away the bad negative externalities that we saw the first years on parking, on safety, on sustainability, and so on. The vehicles actually don't end up in the river or the local lake. That's more of an urban legend. That's true, because if all vehicles would end up in the river, you wouldn't have a business. So, yeah, we get to increase the fleets. We get more and more users on the platform. Consumers consider micromobility now in many cities to be part of their daily mobility routine. And with that, better product, better understanding of the users, more subscription products, which has been like a big breakthrough to get commuter usage and daily usage. We're very excited.
So, double question: do you feel like you've had an influence on the policy, on the regulatory frameworks that we have as a company? And did you band together with your direct competitors, some of which you were on stage with earlier today, to actually have a continued influence over time?
I mean, overall, we've of course influenced the policy and regulations because there were no policy and regulations. And in some situations we have collaborated, in some situations we have been very much competing for various reasons. And in some situations when we thought our policy work and discussions and so on didn't have any effect. We've had huge effect, while in other situations where we've been like, we did such a good job with the politicians and the civil servants, then it didn't work at all. So it's a bit binary also working with governments and the public sector, less predictable and takes longer time than working B2B and with other companies.
So a bit of a mixed bag. So let's talk sustainability. You put out quarterly reports, as you mentioned. In that report is a part about sustainability, but I do want to give you the opportunity to sort of highlight what you're doing. You want to make the company itself also net zero by 2035. What are some of the steps that you're taking towards that goal?
The key word here is circularity. That's what we have learned over the last 7 years. In the beginning, it was a lot around, okay, the vehicles we're producing, how can we decrease the CO2 effect from like the production and manufacturing and so on. But then we realized that will only take us that far. We need to build a kind of circularity loop. Of course, start by reducing the CO2 impact from minerals and metals and so on we're taking from the ground, or even better, use recycled material. Because recycled material is kind of the CO2 impact has already been taken when the materials were taken off the ground. And then everything around manufacturing, how do you manufacture in the most carbon efficient way as possible, especially since we are doing most of our manufacturing in China. And in China, CO2 impact and sustainability is less of a focus than in the Western world. So how do you influence and work with some of our friends who sit in the audience? I see some of them over there. And then when the vehicles hit production on the streets here in Europe, how do you run everything operationally, both cost efficient and carbon efficient, and they are not always aligned. So how do you make them more aligned? And then in the early years we were worse, or we're much better now than what we were back then on the refurbishment cycle and the recycling cycle. And now this year we're building out a more advanced comprehensive refurbishment system across Europe. To be able to refurbish every component of the vehicle several times. Some of the more advanced parts, like batteries, with partners. Most parts we will refurbish in-house and then reuse them. Because it's almost like a philosophical question. What is a scooter? What is a bike? Is it the battery? Is it the IoT module? Is it the frame? Is it the QR code? If you can refurbish every part and build new vehicles from old parts, then that is a new bike, a new vehicle that is great for your profit and loss statement, but also very good for the climate. So it's about closing that loop from production to refurbishment, and when we can't reuse the parts, then be good at recycling and work with recycling partners.
Yeah, that's very clear. How confident are you that you're going to reach your goal by 2035, and what's the biggest challenge for you to get there?
I mean, we wouldn't set the goal if we didn't think we would reach it. In the early years, we set a lot.
I know, but sometimes the goalposts move, and the year that you...
If everything goes according to plan, then we're done earlier. If everything doesn't go according to plan, then it's perhaps plus 1-2 years. And what I talked about now, the circularity aspect of production, operations, refurbishment is key in that, because we will continue. I mean, the best way for us to become net zero CO2. Have very good carbon credentials, is to not produce and build any new vehicles. And that is not our plan. We plan to continue to develop and build and produce better vehicles, better software for our users, for our cities, and so on. So that's like the ongoing battle, of course, between being like a producing and operating company and the CO2. Relatively high confidence. Ask me again in, what is it? No, it's 10 years. We will make it. We will make it. It's 10 years.
All right. Cool. Thank you. I should have asked this question in the beginning, but do you consider yourself a true hybrid company, hardware plus software, or is it still a little bit more tilted towards one versus the other?
I mean, we consider ourselves not even as a hybrid company, but a full stack company. So it's heavy hardware, it's heavy software, it's heavy connectivity, it's heavy data, it's heavy operations, and it's heavy regulations. So there are a million businesses one can run that are easier to run than this, but it's also very impactful and fun. I think me and many of our employees at Voi, we love seeing people out riding the vehicles, the bikes, the scooters. When you come to a new city, when I come to Brussels today, I see people using the bikes. When I go to Gothenburg tomorrow, people are using the scooters and the bikes. It's a very satisfying experience, I think, for everyone working with the product to see it out on the streets being used.
I can imagine. AI came up in the panel that you were a part of earlier. On the software side, that's where a lot of the changes are happening now. How do you look at that from a Voi CEO perspective? All these changes, the hype that you've already sort of highlighted. How do you deal with that? With your software development team, how do you look at that evolution? How much of it is hype and noise versus real impactful things that are being developed?
Broader in the AI space, and it's really LLMs that have broken through over the last couple of years. There is so much noise, but if you can distinguish that, if you can find the signal in that noise and what's valuable for you, as I said in the previous panel, I think the biggest winners from a company perspective, from everything we have seen now, it's a few AI companies, of course, but it will be a red ocean, similar to Micromobility. So most of them will go bankrupt or consolidate or go out of business, but some of them will, of course, be huge. And then it's companies like us, non-AI companies that become very, very good at applying AI both for external products, but as we've seen and continue to see every day, also kind of rebuild the mindset in the company to be open and be able to apply AI internally for productivity improvements, take away the human from the loop, from mundane, repetitive tasks, and so on. So our colleagues can focus on something more productive and value creating than like moving data from here to there to there to there, then into a SaaS tool, and then move it 7 times again. That's, I think, not very fun to do. And now LLMs and AI can help with a lot of that. So we have said our vision within AI, similar to what we had in data analytics and then machine learning a couple of years ago, is that Voi should be the world's first and largest AI fluent or AI native micromobility platform, and ingrain it in everything we do. And that also goes for role descriptions then. Like if you're a marketing manager, how savvy are you in using both data, of course, and analytics, but then AI in your marketing domain, as an engineer, as a mechanic, as a CEO. And then do it on team level, then do it on group level, and then rework our data structure and infrastructure. So our internal operating system also is good and good and ready to use all the benefits that LLMs now are showing they can bring.
I'm going to ask the same question, but a bit more bluntly. There was another well-known Swedish company that announced, like, hey, we're going to use AI in certain fields of our business, and that means we're going to have reductions. In staff, they kind of came back from that. It's Klarna.
It's Klarna. We know them. We know them very well. So
I'm sure you do.
We're neighbors.
Are you literally neighbors?
Literally neighbors.
Yeah, quite nice. So they announced that they were going to replace a lot of the customer service with AI. It turned out not to be the case, or at least not advanced enough to be able to do that in the end. Do you expect to reduce your staff? I think you're about 1,000 people now employed, roughly?
Yeah, so 2 categories of employees at Voi. One, office workers. We were 450, something like that. We're down to 220, so around half. And then on the frontline employee side, so mechanics, fleet specialists, and so on, we haven't seen a decrease, rather an increase, because that scales to some extent with the number of vehicles, and we've increased the number of vehicles. But we think we will see both productivity improvements, we will see cost savings. There will be parts of the company where AI agents, LLMs can do the work better than humans, and then we need to either move, retrain, reskill, or change the composition of that. To me, it's the same as with software, data analytics, and ML, and so on. Jobs and roles will change at a company over time, especially if you drag it out over 100 years, and we plan to build Voi sustainable for 100 years, not 7 years that we are now.
I like that. Nobody's stopping me, but I can see that the time is up. There's no timer here. There is a timer. Yeah. 8 seconds. Wow. That was definitely timing. But I do want to ask one last question. I know you arrived very early this morning in Brussels. You've been at the conference. What have you learned today? What is the one takeaway for you from this event?
I mean, first of all, is Prabin here? Big thank you, Prabin, for organizing this again. Big applause to you. We have missed it. And before we went in here, Prabin said he was thinking about, okay, we do it in London or Paris next year. But I said, no, we do it in Stockholm. We will host you in Stockholm. Stockholm mayoral office is very pro-business and pro-micromobility, and so is the government. I mean, it's a super interesting mix of people, both from the hardware manufacturing side and from the city side and from the operator side and from the technology side and so on. So I was walking in here this morning, very, not surprised, but got a very positive impression, because it's difficult to organize events big like this. People all over the world have flown in, and you see how many great exhibitors there are out there as well. So well done, Prabin and team.
And on behalf of the team, myself, but also the audience, I think thank you for coming and sharing your insights. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you.